I
So
mean,
then what would be the important elements of concept?
so there's the important elements of concept would include the five story components we've already talked about, right? Main character and that character's flaw, and the secondary character and whatever the dynamic is between that character and the main character, the opponent and whatever the opponent wants, their motive, the adventure, the thing that the primary characters do together in the second act of the movie, and the genre. Okay, those are the five components. Other aspects of your concept include things like your theme.
Mm-hmm.
It could include the arena that it takes place in. It could include the time period that it takes place in. It includes things such as what we call the setup event.
Mm-hmm.
And now the setup event is not the thing that happens in the first 10 minutes that makes you go, ooh, no. The setup event is the thing that happens that forces the main characters together and makes them have to go on whatever the journey of the movie is. You have to think about that. That's the thing that starts your second act, right? What's your twist? What's the thing that happens somewhere, somewhere in the middle of your movie that it's not that it changes everything, but it sort of accelerates the nature of the dynamic between the principal characters. It brings everything to a new level. It raises the stakes. Because most, again, we're talking mainstream movies, but this is really true for any movie. Most movies are main character driven, right? They follow the journey of a single main character or a small group of characters. So you need to have a low point for them at some point. You need to have a point at which it looks like they're never going to get where they need to go. Because a lot of your movie gets reflected in how your main character responds to that moment. So you need it. So you have to brainstorm that. That's part of your concept.
But now you're talking about act structures as well, a 3-act structure.
Yeah, well, okay. Which is what most narrative movies are,
okay.
For sure. In fact, I think it would be safe to say that's what movies are, period.
Right.
And then, and then you have to have a scene where the character, faces off against whatever or whoever his or her opponent was, and either overcomes them, if it's a comedy or a happy movie, or succumbs to that opposition, in which case it would be a tragedy. All of those things are part of your concept, as well as we alluded to earlier. The one thing I left out, I mean, there are a few things I probably left out, but the most important thing I haven't mentioned yet is what we talked about earlier, that in addition to everything I just said, you have to have some sort of unique approach to at least one of those things that we just talked about. You have to have a unique approach to one of your characters, or to the relationship between them, or to the nature of the story, the journey that they go on. Maybe you have a unique way of combining genres. Maybe you have a unique way of presenting presenting the story. Like the craft of the writing is what's important. Like, say, for example, Memento, and how it was all told backwards.
Yeah.
There has to be something. One of them has to be unique. It has to, because without that, really, what's the, it could be a unique take on a theme. You Can Count on Me was basically just a unique play on the theme of what happens, when the parents die when you're still young. And
what about a movie like The Matrix?
What's the theme?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Know yourself.
Know yourself.
I mean, they say it. Know thyself.
Okay. and every movie has every movie has a theme.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, there's probably a lot of people out there who are thinking, and rightfully so, that that most good writing, that lots of thematic ideas come out of good writing, any good writing, right? And that's true. But again, if we're talking as a tool for a screenwriter to help develop his or her project, if you're thinking about theme, think about theme as sort of the opposite of the main character's flaw. It's the message of that character's journey. What are we saying because this character got from point A to point B? They're direct reflections of each other. And for example,
So wait a minute.
if you want to,
you just saw Zero Dark 30. So what would be?
let me pick something that I've used as a teaching tool.
Okay.
Just because I'm tired and I don't,
Great.
no
problem.
My mind doesn't want to go there right now. But
Sure.
If I want to write a story about knowing oneself,
Yeah.
about the importance of knowing who you are, and about how you will never live up to your full potential until you really know who you are. If that's the story I want to write, then where I start is with a main character who doesn't know who he is, who has lost, who is skeptical about the world, who is skeptical about, you get the point.
Clarice in Silence of the Lambs.
Okay.
I mean, I could argue that point, but I don't know. But anyway, please continue. I just wanted to go back to my Silence of the Lambs.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, here's someone who, if we want to talk about Silence of the Lambs, this is a person who, that's a person who needed to get to know herself better too. I think it's a little bit clearer in The Matrix, but that's probably just because I've talked about that movie so many times. And not because I'm a particular fan of it, although I do think it's a great movie, but just because there are conceptual elements of it that are so clear that it just becomes a really effective teaching tool. So.
Okay. So, theme. You sort of talked about conceit by referencing unique, making things very unique. One of 5 elements.
Yeah, making some sort of approach. Make one of your approaches to one of the things that I just said unique.
Okay. Is there any?
Now, how do you go about doing that? Well, a little bit, where it starts, I guess, is by thinking of it this way, I think, anyway. We talked a little bit earlier about this idea of windows, right? Well, a window might apply not just to a character, but it might apply to a situation, right? What are the little moments that I'm going to create to communicate this situation, this environment, this dynamic between these characters, whatever it is, right? I might have, when I'm talking about developing my conceit, whatever my unique approach is, it starts there. It starts with developing those unique moments, those little tiny moments like windows, right? That prove that what I think is a conceit actually is a conceit, right? Because you can sit there and say that, well, this is my conceit. This is my unique approach. But okay, fine, prove it. And prove it, the way you start to prove it is by just brainstorming out all of those little moments where we get to see that conceit, where we get to see, and where, more importantly, you get to see, is this entertaining? Is it engaging? Is there enough I can draw from this? Is this enough of a spring, of a wellspring, of a source, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that broadly covers the elements that go into developing a screenwriting craft. Is there something that you would like to add to the things that we've talked about that I haven't asked before we wrap it up?
In terms of process?
In terms of process and craft. We talked about the elements that go into concept. We talked about theme. We've talked about conceit. We talked about logline earlier. Maybe genre.
Well, look, I mean, we could sit here and we could talk about all of these things for hours and hours and hours and hours, of course. I mean, if there's a specific question that someone has about process, I'm more than happy to address it.
Okay.
I guess what I would say is, maybe I'd like to go a little bit more into just the life of a creative person and what
That's
all
where
that
I was
means,
going. Yeah.
And
So, but are we ready to go there?
I think so.
All right.
We'll see. We'll find out if I'm ready.
Again, Kevin's going to be conducting a free screenwriting seminar on the site. So if you have more questions or want more details, he will be doing this on the site and getting into the nuances and specifics of all of this and helping everybody out with their writing process.